I want to tell you something I have not told many people. It was a Tuesday evening in late autumn, and I was sitting at my mother's kitchen table, the same oak table she had wiped down every night for 52 years. There was a small jar of pencils on the windowsill behind her, the kind she kept for crossword puzzles, and the wall clock in the hallway was ticking the way it always had, patient and unhurried. My mother was 78 then. She had made us tea, the way she always did, and she slid the cup across the table toward me. And when her hand met the porcelain, I noticed something I had somehow been too busy, too professional, too much of a doctor to see. Her hand was trembling, not from cold, not from age exactly, from something quieter, something tired. I had been a physician for more than 20 years by then. I had cared for thousands of older adults. I had written prescriptions, ordered scans, delivered gentle news in quiet rooms. And yet, sitting there at my own mother's kitchen table, watching her hand tremble against a warm cup, I realized I had never once asked her what she ate for breakfast. Not really. Not the way a son should ask. Not the way a doctor should ask either. That is where this story begins. And if you will stay with me, if you will pour yourself something warm, and settle into your chair, I would like to walk with you through what that evening taught me. Because what I learned in the months that followed changed the way I care for every older adult who sits across from me. And I believe quietly that it may change something for you too. The tender wound of that evening was not my mother's trembling hand. It was the recognition of how little I had been paying attention. I had spent my career studying the bodies of older adults, and I had missed the plate right in front of me. My mother's cupboards, when I finally looked, were full of the things she had been told for decades were sensible. White toast, margarine in a plastic tub, a canister of instant coffee, a box of low-fat crackers that had been on that shelf longer than my youngest child had been alive. There were no fresh greens, there was no fish. There was one shriveled lemon in the bottom drawer of the refrigerator, and behind it, a jar of pickled beets she had opened months ago and forgotten. I sat with that wound for a long time, because I knew, in the way physicians sometimes know things they wish they did not, that my mother's trembling hand, her thinning arms, the small forgetfulness that had crept into her afternoons, these were not simply the wages of turning 78. These were, in part, the quiet arithmetic of a plate that had grown smaller and less nourishing over the years, without anyone in her life, including her doctor son, noticing. I want to say something clearly, because I know some of you are listening with a lump in your throat. If your own plate has grown quieter in recent years, or if you are watching this on behalf of a parent whose kitchen has grown thin, please hear me. This is not a story of blame. This is a story of noticing. And noticing is where every kindness begins. The next morning, I sat with my mother in the same chair, and I asked her a question I had never asked her before. I asked her, "Mom, what did you eat yesterday?" Not what you meant to eat, what actually crossed your lips. She looked at me for a long moment, and then she laughed a little, the way she used to laugh when I was small and had asked something obvious. "Oh, honey," she said, "I don't really know. A piece of toast, some coffee. A cracker or two in the afternoon. I wasn't very hungry. Those 4 words became the quiet question that changed everything for me as a physician, because I began to ask that question of every patient over 65 who came through my door, and I heard those same 4 words or something like them again and again. From the retired schoolteacher in the blue cardigan, from the widower who had once been a carpenter, from the woman who had raised 5 children on a farm and now lived alone in a small apartment near the river. I wasn't very hungry, and behind that gentle sentence, I began to see a pattern that our medical schools had never quite taught us to see. The plates of many older adults, I realized, had grown so small and so pale that the body itself was slowly forgetting how to be strong. And then I learned something that I want to share with you now, because it reoriented my entire practice. Researchers at Harvard, at the Mayo Clinic, at Johns Hopkins, at the National Institute on Aging, physicians and scientists far more careful than I am, have spent the last several decades quietly gathering evidence about what actually nourishes the body after 65. Not the diets of magazines, not the fads of television, the real measured, observed patterns of what helps older adults live longer, think more clearly, sleep more deeply, and move through their days with steadier hands. And what the research suggests again and again is that there are a small handful of foods, humble, ordinary, grocery store foods, that appear to support the aging body in a way that surprises even seasoned physicians. Researchers have observed that older adults who make room for these foods on their plate, even in small daily portions, tend to have stronger hearts, sharper memories, calmer moods, better sleep, and a quieter kind of resilience against the illnesses that so often gather around later life. I am going to tell you what those foods are. 7 of them. I am not going to tell you as a prescription. I am going to tell you the way I would tell my own mother if I could go back to that autumn evening and sit at her oak table one more time. And before I do, I want to ask you gently, take a slow breath with me. There is no hurry here. This is a conversation, not a lecture. The first food I learned to quietly recommend is the humble egg. For years, I confess, I had been cautious about eggs, the way many of us were trained to be, but the research has shifted, and shifted gently. Physicians now note that for most older adults, 1 or 2 eggs a day appears to be one of the kindest gifts you can offer your body. An egg carries a form of protein that is unusually easy for an aging body to use, and it carries a nutrient called choline that researchers have linked to memory and to the quiet health of the brain. When I began telling my patients, soft-boiled, scrambled with a little butter poached over a piece of good bread, I watched their breakfasts grow warmer, and I watched their afternoons grow steadier. I now eat 2 eggs almost every morning myself. My mother, in her last good years, came to love them again, too. The second food I want to tell you about is fatty fish. And here I mean salmon, sardines, mackerel, herring, the small, oily fish that our grandparents ate without a second thought. Researchers have observed, again and again, that the omega-3 fats found in these fish appear to support the aging heart, the aging brain, and even the aging mood. In my years of experience, I have watched patients who added just 2 small servings of fatty fish a week, a tin of sardines on toast on a Tuesday, a piece of baked salmon on a Sunday, come back 3 months later with a lightness about them that they could not quite explain. Their joints hurt less. They slept a little better. Their thoughts, they told me, felt less foggy. The third food is leafy greens. I know how ordinary that sounds, but please stay with me. Spinach, kale, collards, Swiss chard, arugula, romaine. These humble greens carry a form of folate, of vitamin K, of gentle nitrates that research suggests may quietly protect the aging brain from the small, slow narrowing that leads to memory loss. Physicians at Rush University once followed nearly 1,000 older adults for several years and found that those who ate just 1 serving of leafy greens a day appeared to have brains that tested, on average, more than a decade younger than their peers. A decade. From a handful of spinach wilted into a pan with olive oil, I began sending my mother small bags of baby spinach in the mail. She would laugh at me, but she ate them. The fourth food is berries. Blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries. Whichever ones you can find, whichever ones you can afford, whichever ones are in season at your market. Researchers at Harvard have observed that older adults who eat berries just 2 or 3 times a week appear to experience slower rates of cognitive decline than those who do not. There is something in the deep color of a berry, a family of gentle compounds called anthocyanins, that seems to speak kindly to the aging brain and the aging blood vessels. A small bowl of berries with breakfast, a handful stirred into oatmeal, a few frozen berries dropped into a cup of yogurt in the afternoon. It is that simple, and it is that quietly powerful. The fifth food is beans and lentils. I know that for many of you, beans were the food of leaner years, and there can be a tenderness there, and sometimes a resistance. But researchers who study the longest-lived populations in the world, the small villages in Sardinia and Okinawa, in the mountains of Greece and the hills of Costa Rica, have observed one food on nearly every table in every one of those places: beans, lentils, chickpeas, split peas. A cup of bean soup, a small serving of lentil stew, a bowl of chickpeas warmed with olive oil and lemon. These humble foods carry protein, fiber, and a quiet steadiness that appears to support the heart, the gut, and even the blood sugar of the aging body. In my practice, I have watched patients who added a small serving of beans to their day, 4 or 5 days a week, slowly and gently see their cholesterol numbers soften, their digestion ease, their energy return. I want to pause here and tell you about a woman named Eleanor. Eleanor was 76 when she first sat across from me, in a chair not unlike the one you may be sitting in now. She had been a piano teacher in a small river town in western Pennsylvania for 41 years. She wore a cardigan the color of good clay, and she carried a small notebook in which she wrote down everything I said, in the careful, looping handwriting of a woman who had once taught children to read music. Eleanor had come to see me because her daughter was worried. Eleanor had been forgetting appointments. She had been growing thinner. Her hands, she told me softly, had been trembling when she poured her morning coffee. And when I asked her the question I now ask every older adult who sits before me, "What did you eat yesterday, Eleanor?" Not what you meant to eat. What actually crossed your lips? She looked at me the way my own mother had looked at me across that oak table, and she said, almost apologetic,ly, "I wasn't very hungry." I did not lecture Eleanor. I would never lecture Eleanor. Instead, I asked her if she might be willing to try something small. Just 1 soft-boiled egg with breakfast. Just a small handful of blueberries in a bowl of oatmeal. Just a tin of sardines with crackers on a Wednesday afternoon. Just a small pot of lentil soup on Sundays that she could eat from all week. She wrote it all down in her looping hand, and she nodded, and she went home to her river town. 12 weeks later, Eleanor came back. She was wearing the same clay-colored cardigan, but she was sitting up straighter. Her hands, when she reached for the cup of water on my desk, did not tremble. She smiled, a small, private smile, and she said, "Doctor, I have been playing the piano again. I had stopped, and I did not tell anyone. But last Sunday I played for 2 hours." My fingers remembered. I tell you Eleanor's story because I want you to understand deep in your chest where the important things live, that the small changes we are talking about are not small at all. They are the changes that let a woman play the piano again in a river town in western Pennsylvania. They are the changes that let my own mother in her last good years laugh at me again over a bag of spinach. I want to stop here for a moment. I need to stop here for a moment, because I know that some of you watching this are carrying something quiet. Perhaps you are the Eleanor of your own story. Perhaps you are the son or daughter watching, thinking of a mother whose cupboards have grown thin. Perhaps you are simply tired and lonely and unsure whether any of this can still matter for you, at your age, in your situation, on your particular Tuesday evening. If any of that is true, and I suspect it is true for more of you than would ever say so aloud, I would like to invite you into a small confession with me. In the comments below this video, I would like you to type just one word. The word is hope. Not because a word can heal anything by itself, but because I believe, after 20 years of sitting across from older adults in quiet rooms, that hope is the first ingredient. Hope is the thing that makes a person willing to try a soft-boiled egg on a Wednesday morning. Hope is the thing that made Eleanor pick up her notebook. Hope is the thing that made my mother eat the spinach. So if you are here, and you are listening, type hope. And know that when I read those comments, and I do read them, I will be thinking of you specifically, of your kitchen, of your clock ticking in the hallway, of the cup of tea in your hand. Now let us continue. There are 2 more foods I want to share with you, and they are, in some ways, the tenderest ones. The 6th food is nuts. A small handful of walnuts, almonds, or pecans a day. Researchers at Harvard followed more than 7,000 older adults across many years and observed that those who ate a small handful of nuts most days of the week appeared to live longer, and to live those years with stronger hearts and sharper minds. Walnuts in particular carry the same family of gentle fats, fatty fish, and they seem to speak to the aging brain in the same quiet language. I keep a small jar of walnuts by my reading chair. My mother, in her last years, kept a small dish of almonds by the crossword puzzle on her windowsill. She would eat them one by one, slowly, the way you eat something you have decided to love. The 7th food, and the one I saved for last on purpose, is olive oil, real olive oil. Extra virgin olive oil, poured slowly from a good bottle. Researchers in the great long studies of the Mediterranean have observed again and again that older adults who use olive oil as their primary fat, a spoonful drizzled over vegetables, a spoonful stirred into soup, a spoonful poured over a piece of good bread with a little salt, tend to have healthier hearts, quieter inflammation, and, some studies suggest, a lower risk of the slow forgetting that so many of us fear. In my own kitchen, olive oil has replaced almost everything else. I cook with it. I finish with it. I pour it over a warm bowl of beans on a cold evening, and I feel in some small and grateful way that I am eating the same food my grandmother's grandmother ate. I want to tell you what I have watched happen over and over in patients who begin gently to make room for these 7 foods on their plate. Not all at once, not perfectly, simply gently. I have watched hearts grow quieter, blood pressure numbers that had crept upward for years begin slowly to soften. I have watched patients tell me, with a note of surprise in their voice, that they had climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor of their own home without stopping to rest for the first time in a long while. I have watched minds grow clearer. I have watched patients who once forgot the names of their neighbors begin, week by week, to remember them again. I have watched a retired librarian in his 80s finish a novel for the first time in 3 years and weep a little in my office as he told me. I have watched Eleanor play the piano again. I have watched moods grow gentler. Older adults who had drifted quietly into a low kind of sadness, a sadness they had come to accept as simply the shape of getting older, have told me some months into these small changes that they felt lighter, that the mornings did not feel as heavy, that they had begun again to look forward to small things. A phone call, a neighbor's dog, the first snow. I have watched sleep grow deeper. I have watched joints grow easier. I have watched hands stop trembling around morning cups. I have watched, in short, older adults come home to their own bodies. And I have watched their children, the sons and daughters watching over them, begin to breathe again too. None of this is magic. None of this is a cure. Research suggests, and I have observed, that these foods are not medicines. They are simply the quiet materials from which an aging body slowly rebuilds itself, day by day, meal by meal, one soft-boiled egg at a time. I would like to share with you now what I now do myself, not as a prescription, not as a demand, simply as an offering, the small daily practice of a physician who has watched too many kitchens grow quiet and has learned slowly how to keep his own kitchen warm. 1. I begin the day with an egg, soft-boiled most mornings. Sometimes scrambled with a little butter and a scatter of leafy greens wilted into the pan. It takes 7 minutes. 2. I keep a small bowl of berries in the refrigerator, washed ready. I add a handful to my oatmeal or to a small cup of plain yogurt in the afternoon. When berries are out of season, I use frozen ones. They are just as kind to the brain. 3. I eat fatty fish twice a week. A tin of sardines on toast with a squeeze of lemon on a Tuesday. A small piece of baked salmon on a Sunday with olive oil and whatever greens are in the market. That is all. 4. I keep a small pot of beans or lentils in the refrigerator most weeks. A pot of lentil soup on a Sunday evening feeds me gently through Wednesday. Add a spoonful of olive oil at the table. 5. I keep walnuts by my reading chair and leafy greens in my crisper drawer. And I use olive oil as my kitchen's quiet foundation. When I remember, I eat a small handful of walnuts in the afternoon. When I forget, I forgive myself and I remember tomorrow. That is the whole practice. There is nothing more to it. There is no supplement I am hiding from you. There is no secret ingredient. There is only the quiet, daily kindness of showing up to your own plate with a little more love than you did yesterday. I want to end where I began, at my mother's oak table, on that Tuesday evening in late autumn, watching her hand tremble against a warm cup of tea. I did not know that night that I would still be learning from her years later. I did not know that her small kitchen and her small changes and her willingness at 78 to try a soft-boiled egg for the first time in years would teach me more about medicine than any of the books on my shelves. She lived after that autumn for another 9 good years. She played her crossword puzzles with a steadier hand. She ate her spinach, and she laughed at me for sending it. And when she died, at 87, in the same house she had lived in for 52 years, she died quietly in her own bed, having eaten a soft-boiled egg for breakfast that morning and a small bowl of blueberries after her tea. I tell you this not to make you sad. I tell you this because I want you to know that it is never too late. It is never too late. Not at 70, not at 80, not at 90, not on the particular Tuesday evening when you happen to be watching this video, with a clock ticking in your hallway and a cup of something warm in your hand. Your body has been carrying you faithfully for a very long time. It has asked for very little, and what it is asking for now, a soft-boiled egg, a handful of berries, a small tin of sardines, a spoonful of olive oil, a bowl of lentils on a Sunday, a handful of walnuts, a wilted little heap of spinach on the side of your plate, is so small and so kind and so gently possible that I believe, with everything I have learned in 20 years of sitting across from older adults in quiet rooms, that you can do it. And if you are watching this on behalf of someone you love, a mother, a father, a grandparent, an old friend, I would ask you gently, sit down at their oak table this week. Ask them what they ate yesterday, not what they meant to eat, what actually crossed their lips, and then together choose one small thing, just one, a single egg, a single handful of berries, a single tin of sardines. Start there. If this conversation has meant something to you, if it has softened something in your chest, or reminded you of someone you love, or made you feel, even for a moment, less alone in the quiet arithmetic of getting older, I would be grateful if you would gently tap the like button below, and subscribe to this channel, and ring the small bell so that the next conversation finds its way to you. Not because I need those things, but because there are others out there sitting at their own kitchen tables tonight who are waiting for a conversation like this one to find them. And your small tap helps me reach them. And remember, before you go, type the word hope in the comments. Let me know you were here. Let me know you are still standing at your own oak table, willing to try one soft-boiled egg tomorrow morning. We are walking this road together, you and I, and Eleanor from the river town, and my mother from the house with the ticking clock, and every quiet older adult who has ever sat down to a plate that had grown a little too small. We are walking it together, and I will meet you here again next time with another cup of tea, and another quiet conversation, and another small kindness for the body that has carried you so faithfully for so very long. It is never too late. It never has been, and it never will be.